Yay. Hi, Yvonne.
Hi, Sovereign.
So
It's
nice. It's
always
been a while.
such, yeah, it's a good time when you and I get together. There's a beautiful energy that suddenly just goes whoosh. Yes, we're playing.
Hmm. So great. Well, we've got a great topic today, and I want to invite you to just jump straight in. I love the internal navigation system that we have. And yeah, there's so much to say about what the current circumstances in the outer world seem to be kind of drawing our attention towards. And really, really love to hear you're jumping into this one.
Well, I'd love to jump into this one because it is so interesting to me when the topic is given to me, and then I get all these downloads. It's a crazy word, but it's like I'm being talked to all the time. And so this morning it was first know thyself. And when I really thought about that, no, wow, isn't that the crux of it all? First know thyself. We don't know ourselves. We don't know who we are. We're an end product of other people's input of telling us who we are. And so the subject that we're talking about today, the topic about turn on your built-in GPS, came about because I look at people out there and they're so separated from their own inner voice. I live my whole life from there. And, I was watching the tennis. Tennis is big here at the moment in Melbourne. And I almost always know who's going to win because it's already out there in the ether. And sometimes that's not much fun. And sometimes I want to change it, but it doesn't happen. And so I thought about, okay, what are you telling me here? The misunderstanding, I believe, that we all suffer from through our conditioning and certainly programming is that we are different to nature. And this is really in alignment with, your passion of syntropy and human ecology. If you look out in nature, it tells us all the time birds fly millions of miles, kilometers, wherever you live. And they don't have a GPS thing. They're not asking each other where we're going. They know. Plants, they turn to the light automatically because they know that's where their life comes from. That's what they need. I love sunflowers who turn to the sun through, as the sun moves, the sunflower turns because it knows instinctively, innately, that's where its life is. And somehow we have been duped in believing that we don't have an internal radar system like that. But we do. And it is because we're not taught it, we're not shown it, that it has become almost extinct within us. And it always makes me laugh when people say, are you psychic? It's like, oh, you know, no, I'm human. And I actually remember I have a built-in radar system that never steers me wrong because that radar system wants life. That's why I'm here. It is the lifeblood in me. It's the life stream in me, like that life stream. And here we are. It's not up here. So I wanted to explore this thing about sense because we have lost our common sense. Now, people think that means that it's an intellectual 2 plus 2 makes 4. Well, that is what, at the moment, it certainly doesn't. But sense is a feeling. It's not an analytical thing. It's not an intellectualizing thing. It's not it is a feeling. And we need to learn to feel our way on our path.
Yeah, so nice. this is so interesting again around the language, how, what do we call it, it's been co-opted, or it just naturally kind of progressed into less of connectivity with our own inner awareness. We've taken this word sense as if it doesn't make sense, and sense making is something that happens through our thinking, while the word sense comes from sensing, which comes directly from feeling. And yeah, for me, as I started this journey in syntropy more and more, and being open to feeling into what nature actually is having to show us in terms of what it is doing, not what it is that I think that, you know, from a labeled and boxed perspective. I usually just come back to the notion that I used to call things weeds. And then I learned that I can relate to that differently. They're just volunteers there. And but that's also not really true. That everything in life's performing a function with purpose. And that kind of took me out of judgment. And so, okay, well, I don't know what the function is. I know it's purposeful. So if it has a purposeful function, I may just question what that is, which is that state of open curiosity, which for me is kind of like a feeling based place where I allow my cells to come into resonance with what is in the field being expressed. And through the curiosity, being able to tap into what is happening and being able to then witness that and see that for what it is doing. It has really allowed me to come closer in bioresonance with my own sensing, my own inner awareness, my own knowing of things that isn't necessarily from the intellect. And interesting enough, what I then end up saying a lot of the times once I kind of have explored something, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Because the language is still kind of, yeah, it's pre-programmed in a way for me too, where I still use that sentence. Oh, that makes so much sense. But the word has started to mean a different meaning to me, where it's more like a body experience as opposed to a kind of intellectual conceptualization of, oh, now I have explained it. Now it has a reason. And now I understand, therefore, what it all means. And yeah, it's so interesting that during these times, these past 2 years, that there's been so much that I experienced was continuously drawing my attention to try and make sense from an intellectual place what it all means and where is it all going, and how it's not in alignment with what we should be doing or could be doing, or that there's an oppressor at work that is doing all these negative things. And what it did to me, it kind of made me forget, which is quite funny to witness in hindsight, to just follow my own cells, to follow my own what fills me up, what is in resonance with me. And I felt for a while this kind of weird moral obligation to work it all out, because I had this kind of bit of a fantasy about myself that I'm a bit of a visionary. I kind of know how deep the rabbit hole goes in terms of all the cult programming. And I feel that if I look at all this, I can distill it and I can pull it apart, and I can use syntropy to kind of show that it is all performing a function with purpose. But with that, I wasn't actually bringing more joy and more play and more aliveness into my own world, because looking at all that stuff just wasn't bringing joy or aliveness to my cells. And when I started feeling into that, it was a couple of months ago where I really was like, wow, how am I really feeling about this? And I realized, well, if it's not feeling to fill me up, me not looking at it, what does that do? Well, that doesn't change anything, but it changed my experience of what seemed to be happening out in the world. That once I looked outside of my window, or once I looked out in nature, none of those stories were happening. They were only happening here. And it's been a beautiful kind of return upon another return to have that revalidation of how relevant it is to follow my cells, to follow my inner, what what enlivens me, and with that remembering, oh, this is how I bring into being the earth that I do want to live in. This is how I infuse the web of the greater dream with one that actually fulfills and harmonizes, and also actually has the capacity to transform the external reality that I could look at as something bad, negative, or harmful. And I love the whole sensing. It is just such a beautiful word to kind of pull apart and say, hang on, does it really make sense, or does it feel, how do we sense about it? Yeah, it's really great.
You know, you mentioned the word resonance. I used to, when I started working with people, I used to always ask to them, so is it making sense to you? And then after a while, I thought, hang on a minute. So now I just say, does it resonate? Is what I'm saying to you resonate? Because if it's not resonating, it's not yours. Don't judge it, just leave it alone. Just say, oh, well, that's not mine. Because we are energy beings, and that is what we've got to learn. You know, you say all this outside has a function with purpose, and it sure does. What it does, what the purpose is, to bring us back to remembering who we are, to remembering that we are nature, that we need to start to work with nature, to be one with nature, if we are ever going to move forward as a species and evolve into a higher state of consciousness. And nature doesn't have, you know, it doesn't have our intellectual part, and that they're lucky because it seems to get in the way. And so, as I'm listening to you, one of the things that just came up for me was that when we have attempted to make sense of things in the old language, what we're actually doing is to attempt to fit what we see into the old programmed, conditioned intellectual memory. Instead of, is it actually giving me life? This is life giving. Because nature's radar system is based on that. It is whatever is life giving for me at the present time, I'm going for. That's why birds migrate. That's why we watch the whales going up and down. You know, that is why we see seals going for goodness know how far to have their pups. That is nature in action. They're not sitting there, well, does it make sense to me? No, they automatically have this built-in radar. So what makes humanity believe that we didn't come with that? Well, I can tell you what makes them believe that, because they've never been taught it. And unfortunately, due to the way we're conditioned and programmed on a daily basis from the day we're born, we we learn in a way that what we're taught is what is true for us. What we're taught is what life is. And I think we have come to a crisis point where we need to start from the beginning and look back and go, maybe this isn't life giving. Maybe this is doing something quite different. And if we examine within, then there's always something inside of us that is saying yes or no. But if we're always up here in the head and in our fear and in our concern of whether people are going to approve of us, or whether we're going to get a fine, or whether we're going to catch something, or whether somebody is going to tell on us, there's a million stories up there that are constricting. They're not life giving. Then we are caught in the matrix. We're caught in this place of conditioned programming that is holding us and keeping us from evolving and from being connected to source. We are an expression of life itself. And when we learn to connect to that life force within us and trust that it knows how to preserve itself, That is why we can heal ourselves. That is why we live in this amazing organism that is regenerative and is so magical. But we've lost faith in it. We've lost faith in ourselves. We've lost our connection to the creation that incarnated us and put this life form into a physical body. And it's that programmed conditioning that have not shown us who we truly are. So, yes, we have this built in radar system. It is so amazing, it's so magical. And if we really want to create a new earth, which is what you and I are passionate about, and we're creating these amazing communities. And I don't know, people who are watching us, they realize just, for me down here in Australia, what is occurring in this community is just so heart-rending. People are coming every week looking. They're finding that their life force is taking them to a place where all of them is welcome, where freedom already exists. And you, Sob, are doing exactly the same thing with the Brave New Life community that is constantly growing, and people are coming because they find their tribe. They find a place where sense comes from the heart, not from the head. And that is really what I so wanted to explore today. If we want to take this journey, this hero's journey, to a higher state of consciousness in a new earth and in a 5D dimensional vibrational frequency, then we have to change, because in that place we will be completely transparent. And to get there, we have to come back to knowing our own GPS system.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'd love for you to share more around this GPS system. I love the analogy. Of course, it's a little bit drawn out of our modern day age, because it's, I think it's the general positioning system or something like that. But it is, where are we positioned? And I find it interesting myself, always looking through time. I ask myself, how did we get here? And we come out of the age of reason, which has been what I call the glorification of mind, where through Newtonian scientific inquiry, men predominantly, I also call it the age of men, have kind of tried to reason out everything that exists and put it in little boxes. But along with that time, we also became very equipped as a human species to become navigators, and we started using tools for that. And we started in that using agency outside of ourselves to say, where's true north? And so, we all know about a compass, and nobody wants to get lost at sea. Uh, and at the same time, I see that progressively we've developed this kind of codependent relationship on external technologies that will give us exactly, in the practical sense of things, where we are going. But in the archetypal and the spiritual sense of it, it is actually taking us more away from knowing our own intuitive awareness of whether we should take a left or a right. And we're in that much more, well, at least for myself, I can see that I don't want to take the wrong turn because I don't have the time to take the wrong turn. And so I rather know whether I should turn left, and something tells me that. And interesting for myself, when I reflected, when I really started on this journey, and GPS systems just came about. I had one, and I thought it was great in the beginning. Oh, I don't even have to think anymore. This lady just tells me at the next intersection, turn left. And what I found is that my reliance on it and my journey home to a self-sovereign way of navigating made it very aware. It's like, well, if you keep using this, you're never actually going to become a master navigator. You're just going to be relying on technological resources or agency that is guiding you so that you don't have to think or feel into where you are really at. And it showed me how much I was, through using these tools, much more in my head. It didn't actually bring me peace. It didn't actually bring me comfort, because by kind of relinquishing my responsibility to feel into where am I going, and how am I going to navigate there myself based on my feelings, I created a whole bunch of space. I don't have to think about or feel into that anymore. I can just, drift off into whatever la la land and be preoccupied with what it is that I'm going to be doing when I get to where I'm going. And it didn't bring any more peace to myself. And so I discontinued the use of that form of agency. And I realized that I was much more in my body. I was much more present with where I was in that exact moment, as opposed to waiting for the cue of whatever her name was, telling me how to go about it. And it's really interesting that these systems in the external world even have a voice operator that is almost like an external representation of the higher self, the inner self, that says, now you want to go here and now you want to go there. And so for me, it's been a very playful game to kind of, how do I actually feel? Because I kind of started relying on it, and then I stopped using it. And then I kind of got confronted with, well, I actually don't know where I'm. And I played with it for a while to discover what comes up for me when I am realizing I'm probably not going in the right direction. And how did I make that decision in that way? And didn't I have an intuitive call to actually say, no, you want to go over here? And that's something that a lot of people would say, well, I just don't have time for that. And for me, this external manifestation of something that we have had always within really does benefit recultivating and retuning in with. And it's not so much about our practical navigation, whether we're going to take a left turn on the road in the street next over. It's more about our spiritual navigation, our human journey, and following really what brings us more fulfillment, what brings life, what enhances our enlivening sense of my life's direction is on par with what I actually came here for. And so that then becomes a much deeper questioning. Many of these kind of sub layers of this we have gone into together, and I just keep finding so much value for myself, re-exploring and going over it again, or looking at it from a slightly different angle. And I'm just so grateful that we can do this, that we have the space and time to create a conscious container to kind of break this down and see, like, oh yeah, we did come out of that whole age of reason. Where's that leading us to if we stick with that? And wasn't it just to show us that if you keep doing it like that, you're actually further removed from your innate relationship and your intrinsic knowing of how life functions, and therefore how you can be the master navigator of your own life, which is what I have taken on so seriously. I want to ask in with you, Yvonne, around these beautiful communities that we are fostering. I have initiated the Brave New Life community, and it keeps blossoming, and it's such a fulfilling place where more and more people find that they are totally welcome to be exactly who they are. And I also noticed in one of your shares just recently that when new people arrive into the heart space, the warmth and the simplicity, and that openness, that there is almost a sense of disbelief that it's like, wow, I, I, I think the way you put it, that this this person shared that there was no awareness that this existed. And it really struck me. It's like, wow, how beautiful is it that there is the conscious co-creation, which is a field of love that is being co-cultivated like a garden, that when new visitors come, that they are like, they almost need a little bit of a roadmap to to identify what it is that they're really seeing, because they're still looking through a lens of, it's almost like they're coming into the space and they're almost unable to hear the love, the openness, the welcoming frequency, because they're almost hearing impaired, or they still have their glasses on that says no, that it's almost like the people are deleted out of the picture that is right in front of them. And I'd love you to share a little bit more about that, because these people are following that inner GPS, but then when they arrive, they are having a conflict with themselves.
Mm. Well, yes. So that comes to the core of us, I think. Every human, well, every bit of life that we, as we know it, is constructed with its own individual vibrational signature, so its own specific frequency. And so every human being has this signature within it. And unfortunately, because we've become so head oriented, and we've been intellectualized and everything has to be analyzed, um, it has to go through this filter of right and wrong according to what's up in there, and not according to what it feels like down here. We've kind of lost our connection with that. And so, what I see happening in the world today, and what I'm so excited about, because as you know, I've been doing it a long, long time, and so is that these people that are coming to us, they don't even know why. It's like, oh, and because it is the awakening of this signature, looking for its resonance, looking for a place where it feels at home. We have spent so much time in our life forcing ourselves to be in places where we don't fit, but we do it anyway because we're told to, and it's supposed to be good for us, or it's, for 1,000 reasons I won't bore you with. But each one of them, if it's not in resonance with this signature, with this core frequency that makes the individual up, then ultimately we are going to live a life of pretense, a life of disconnection, and a life of, I'm not going to say misery, because a lot of people manage to somehow get some happiness and joy out of it, but a diminished life, a life that isn't full, that doesn't reach its potential. And those days are over. And that is because of the way that the cycles run, and this earth is moving into a new cycle where we are going to be in a place of light. And that is only, I'm not talking about light as far as, it's going to be brighter. I'm talking about a lighter vibrational frequency, so that we're going to be uplifted. And anything that isn't of that light is going to have to be dismantled. And that is the time that we live in today. And so I've said to you several times, and I mention it time and time again, if we do not show an alternative to what's going on, how do people know where to find, where to go? And that is what you and I are creating, the alternative, the heart space, the home. And so as we are doing this, and we're not alone, there are many, many people doing it around the world, and I keep encouraging people, look, start wherever you live, invite one person, two people, they bring a friend, and just create a heart space where people feel welcome, where they're accepted, and where they're just loved no matter what. And where you represent freedom. And that is freedom to be all of you. And it is such a wonderful thing, because as we do that, we're growing. and people are seeing these places and they can't help it. It's like a homing pigeon, right? They automatically just go, oh, did you hear about that place? No. Well, you should come. Oh, okay. It's like we have been hypnotized into being anything but ourselves. We have been hypnotized into being something for others. And that is changing. And the transition, the ascension we're going through is that finally this signature, this beautiful key of resonance that is purely yours, is asking to be taken home. And so I watch people walk in, and as you say, they look a little bit stunned at first because there is no judgments, there are no opinions, there is just, oh, hi, do you have? It's like, yes. Because yesterday I think I wrote about how wonderfully it fills our immune system to hug. We're meant to hug each other. It is a healthy thing to do. And yet we're told to fear people and not do it. Everything goes against our health. I look at the moment because I've mentioned tennis because I watch it and I'm a bit of a fan. And I see all these people sitting. We had 33 degrees yesterday. And I tell you what, on the tennis court, it's about 50. And I don't know how they do it. But people are asked to wear masks, watching, sitting outside. It goes against all health. What is the stuff that we're supposed to do? Health and safety? Completely. But no, we're all doing it. And I go, hang on a minute. While you're doing it, your life force is not in tune. And you are not in tune with your natural radar system, because that would take you somewhere else. And just before I hand it back to you, you asked me about that GPS system. So I'm now to that point where I often turn around right when I should turn left. And so then I go, I have a really good nose. You know that saying, I've got a good nose? Well, I don't know what it is, but I've got a good GPS system in here. And I just go, well, I need to go there. So I don't know how the heck I'm going to get out of this mess, but just get me there. And the next minute, I'm out of it. Because I trust my inner radar system. And as long as I'm always taking me towards life enriching experiences, it's engaged.
Yeah, so great. The inner guidance that we seek out throughout our lives. Once we get on that journey as humans, we want to figure out how to get more in tune with it. And for my own self, I called it my inner guidance, but was still looking for outer guidance. And of course, in the hero's journey, guides are always relevant because there has been so much disconnection and so much, well, with how I grew up and when I started my awakening process, I had this like huge realization in how much non-truth I was actually operating and how false, so to speak, the narratives I was believing to be true were actually to be. And of course, it took me a while to then get out of the judgment around that because I felt fairly jaded to have lived, an 20 odd years in all sorts of perceptive ideas that never really felt right, but it was all that was there around me. And tapping into that inner guidance, that inner knowing that comes out of our own body, I really like the notion that we have an inner self. We call it a higher self, but we have a self. And what I picked up on lately is that we are talking about yourself as in it is something that I, as the person that I think that I am, I have a self. Because when you say you got to find yourself, well, who's this self that I own, or maybe that inevitably actually owns me and is just waiting for me to kind of realize that that self that is my self is something that I can reunite with and come into a, a marrying again. And I found in the relating things to the natural world and the organic world and the living world, I picked up this beautiful sentence that basically what states your cells know, and the cells do know, because look at these cells. They're, I don't know how to make my heart beat. I don't know how to digest my food. um, I hardly know how to properly go for a really good run, because if I had to think about how to move my legs, so the cells have all this innate inborn wisdom on how to be, how to navigate, how to optimize, and to come home more to the cellular inner knowing. And that's, my cells and myself, it almost sounds one and the same. And so I started bringing it much closer together, that this self that is in my cells may be most optimally communicating to this I that I think that I am by the cellular knowing of what actually is in resonance. So I really love that you bring that in, this kind of bioresonance, which is what all of life seems to be navigating on. It's following its own, the cells are being an expression of what it is. I see those beautiful sunflowers going and moving with the sun, following the light, and the cells are making the changes to make that possible. Of course, the sunflower isn't sitting there, well, I don't really feel like turning right now because I just already turned a little bit 10 minutes ago. But I recognize that the cells are innately attuned to the frequency increase that is occurring. And all that's really sitting in the way is all of these entropic, fear based belief systems, this kind of caged in set of mentalities that is about how reality operates, or what is true or what is not true. And I think for my own being, using new language that hasn't been used 1,000 times over, like follow your cells know, has been something that kind of, because it's a new sentence structure, very easily comes up in my neurochemistry. What do my cells say? Oh, okay. Well, my cells say, oh, this is actually a nay. And so distilling this down further and also tapping that into the will, that we do things because we're willing, or we do things because we're not willing. But most of the times we're actually not willing, and then we do things anyways because we have all this story going on. Well, if I don't do it, then they will think this or that will happen. Or, and so for me, at the essence, there's a nay and a yay. That is a feeling. And if I can just keep following the yay, which is what the cells will say is a yay, is this a yay, cells? Is this a yay? Then I can keep track on how to bring myself into more coherence with where life in its totality is already operating. It's not like that's where it's going. Nature is already operating in this beautiful field of syntropy, beautiful field of symbiotic co-creation, and the frequencies are rising in consciousness. And so for me, how can I, if that frequency is the yay, how can I follow my cells in following that? And it's not a strong pull. It's not like, yeah, that's where I have to go, because it is this gentle energy that I feel. I'd like you to unpack that inner mechanical world a little bit more with us, Yvonne, because there's something really simple at the essence of it, and yet, as you've said so many times, it's simple, but it's not easy.
One of my most irritating phrases for my students. you know, it, it is so simple, and it really is easy, because you talk about your cells, and yes, I love that term, and I'm all about giving the mind language it doesn't have a file on. because the file is always a conditioning that was created by somebody else for their agenda, not for yours. So I'm always looking for words that are going to take the mind, stop the mind from going off on a tangent, because it doesn't have any tangent to work with. And so I do love that. For me, it is more about, I've stepped really into this awareness that I am energy, pure energy in an energetic universe. And so whether you call it cells, whether you call it your life force, it doesn't really matter. We have to label things whilst we're still in this human situation. It, the thing about it is that it knows, and when the more that you step into following that inner sense, which is completely constructed and inscripted with your life path for the highest good for your individuated life purpose. And that purpose is for the expansion of life itself. Once you sign up for that, and I have a success formula, and it starts with commitment. And when you commit to living according to your innate life purpose, then you then tune into something that will take you always to where it will support that life. But we've been so conditioned to live in fear of lack, because that keeps us manipulatable. I've learned to say that word, it's not easy for a foreigner. And so, we become vulnerable. But what I've learned, and this is something I'm going to say with such love and such passion for our humanity, is when we come home to remembering who we are as the beautiful expression of prime creator of this quantum field of intelligence, of life itself, that has created itself into a physical body. When we remember that is who we are, and we commit to living it to the best of our knowing, what happens is that we never have to be in lack. We never have to be without, because life itself only seeks life. So when you get yourself into that space, which is the new earth space, you only have to ask. And if what you ask is life enhancing and life enriching, it turns up. And that's happening faster and faster. It's like, wow, okay, there it is. That is the reward for learning to live, as you say, everything with a function that has purpose. And the purpose is evolution, expansion, is being true to this inner voice, that inner radar system. You said before that the sunflower doesn't sit there and go, I don't think I'll turn today, because, and then we would do that. How many times are we, I do it myself. You need to go for a walk. Oh, look, it looks a bit hot, it looks a bit cold, it looks a bit wet, right? We do that. But the body is saying life-giving is getting out there and getting some fresh air, right? And that's really as simple as it is. They're not so easy. It's actually getting out and doing it, right? But it is coming home to knowing who you are. First, know thyself. And we have to stop believing that we are what people are telling us that we are. These creatures that are not of nature, that are not self-healing, that need somebody else to constantly tell them what to do and how to do it, that have no freedom of thought, no critical thought. And they're all out there. None of it makes sense. It doesn't make any sense intellectually. but it most definitely doesn't resonate with anything that is life giving. And so, these new earth communities that we are creating, that is the foundation, is for people to find themselves and have the space to find that inner radar, to realize that I am an individuated spark of life. And as long as life is seeking life, then I just set it free to do so. And you'd be amazed where that will take you. I have no idea from one moment to the next where my life is taking me. What I do know is that I'm willing to go as long as it is enriching and enlivening. I am willing to go. And beautiful things appear.
So beautiful. Yeah, I was just reflecting on this inner yay, this inner nay, and how to follow that. Like what could be, because that's that navigational piece, that inner knowing that is like the needle on the compass. That is the pendulum that goes left or it goes to the right. It goes up and down that way or it goes up and down that way. And it took me a long time to kind of distill down, like there's so many rabbit holes in the mind that try to still make it about good or bad, or any of these comparing concepts. And through the study of syntropy, I really started feeling into the innate knowing, and it's become my guidance system to follow what is natural, because the cells do know what is natural. It may be covered up with a heap load of emotional charges around it, which are trauma-based imprints of that we didn't get it that way. But the cells do know what is natural. And so that's become kind of my compass to check in with myself. Is it what it is that I'm doing natural, or is it not natural? And even if it's not natural, it's likely performing a function with purpose, and its function is to bring me back to doing it in a natural frequency. Because once we start aligning ourselves in our actions and our thoughts and the way that we navigate in what the cells know innately is a natural orientation and is in alignment with a natural frequency, or in resonance, as you put it, that inner knowing has never gone anywhere. It's just that it's a muscle that I had not trained for the first 3 decades of my life. And that is because it wasn't encouraged. I wasn't asked to feel into my own inner truth. I was just told what was going to be done, or where we were going, or how things were or how things weren't. And that return to that inner exploration of am I, are these thoughts actually natural to be having? And if they're not, how do I get out of that in order to find my direction to be in alignment and in resonance with the natural frequency? That you can say, well, what is that natural frequency? Well, the beauty of it is that the cells know. We don't have to intellectualize that. We don't have to say, well, on the scale of 1 to 100, this is where that's all the age of reason. That's all the trying, dissecting it all again. And that's just the same mechanism of thought that is saying, oh, that's a great new concept. Like, yeah, well, we'll integrate that into our existing, factory of distilling what's good, wrong, right, bad. The simplicity that I found was to ask, and it sometimes has been a very confronting question. Is this actually natural, what I'm doing? And if it's not natural, then why am I doing it? And all of a sudden it becomes a choice. And that's where I feel a lot of this turning on of the inner built-in GPS system is about choosing to turn it on in those decision-making instances. And for me, I didn't even know that that was a choice. I didn't even know that that was available. I didn't even know that I could question in with myself, is this natural? And do I want to keep doing it like this if it's not natural? And so I found that most of what I was doing was unnatural. And yet I didn't need to kind of intellectualize how we would do it naturally, because the cells knew that what was more natural, and it's being more loving, more compassionate to self, to others. And if I wasn't in that frequency because I was in judgment, I would just ask myself, well, do I want to keep doing it like this? And so that inner mechanism of the built-in GPS and how to turn it on. I'd really love your take on how to flick that switch. What is that little turn on button? Because there it says, turn on your built-in GPS. For me, that little element, do I want to keep doing it like this? Because it is a choice to turn it on or to have it not operate. And if it doesn't operate, I'm just on autopilot. I'm just following whatever other agencies of informing me are running programs for my navigation. I'd really like you to share a little bit more about that. And with that, find your beautiful closing statements to our amazing hour here, Yvonne. Such a great topic.
Well, it's a great question because I was just looking at one of a comment here by Jeanette, in which she says the struggle is silencing the mind in order to listen to them, and so it is so important, and it is a very simple switch. Make a decision. If you look at the word decision, within it there is incision, there is a cutting. So you just decide, right? No, done. Now, I've got it. You said, oh, that sounds easy. Well, no, it's not. But once you make the decision, then you have to, every time that the old programming comes up, you have to say no to it. And I have to say, is struggle natural? You talk about being natural. Is struggle natural? No. Is stress natural? Is being forced to do something against your will natural? No. Is going against your innate belief of health and well-being natural? No. So it is really making a decision, cutting away that which isn't natural, cutting away that which isn't life-giving. So, just looking at Jeanette's question, is that how do you stop the mind? Well, I have to tell you that I actually send my mind packing. In other words, unless it had something worthwhile that was life-giving to offer me, I was not engaging with it anymore. So I actually have a very empty mind because the mind is a tool. It is a transmission station. That's all it is. But what we've done is we've made it a decision maker, and it's not equipped for that. Your decisions have to come from the heart, from the soul. The information might come through the intellect, but that's all. I don't keep anything in my mind. I've got the most vacant upstairs you could find. And I once used to be so intellectually proud, right? But that was when my life was in a struggle and it was headed for a ditch. Today, I know that the eternal wisdom is available to all. It lives in the ether. It does not live between the ears. Between the ears lives programming. So I go to a higher place for my information, for my yay or nay. And I often say to you, Sob, that I have a filter. So no matter what information I listen to, I get a yay or a nay. And it is my yay or nay. It may not be your yay or nay. And that's the big thing. We are somehow programmed that we've all got to have the same medicine. We've all got to go to the same schooling. We've all got to have the same certificates. We've all got to prove that we can, learn the alphabet. We've been put under this umbrella of sameness when we are all individuated, fabrics of a greater consciousness. And that is why we're in this mess, because this greater consciousness wants to be set free. It wants to explore and expand, and it wants you, the individual, to be coming home to its inner GPS system, which will take you exactly to a life expansion. But you need to trust it, and you need to be able to differentiate between what is life giving and what is not life giving. Hey, nature knows, it's showing us all the time. And to use again the sunflower, it doesn't question that if it doesn't turn to the sun, it's going to wither and die. So it's our time to turn to our sun, that is the sun within our heart, and to set it free. And that sun, it's not so difficult, it's pure love. If you make everything based on that foundation, love, compassion, peace, harmony, the absolute necessity and the only thing you'll support that will give equality and prosperity and well being for all, that needs to be the focus. And that is what your internal radar is tuned to. Trust me, I know.
So beautiful, Yvonne. Thank you for sharing. These conversations for me are just such profound reminders of me being able to express what it is that I have concluded or have eluded or have discovered in my own journey, but then to really sit with it and to really meander through it. There's so much value because there's timeless reminders of something that we do have the capacity to put language around so that we can return and stay actually more in bioresonance with those frequencies that are of that natural nature and also that are allowing us to upgrade ourselves. And if anyone felt that this was of value to you, we want to invite you to share this out. I can't share anything anymore on social media anywhere these days because apparently even these conversations are of such substance that you know whatever the community standards around it are, I'd love for anyone to share this out further. We are doing these regularly. If you go to Yvonne's channel, you'll see so much inspiration and so many beautiful notes of remembrance that are all about how to attune ourselves to the frequencies that are here that we may be feeling struggle around because we're not recognizing fully that they're actually here to welcome us in back home, and how to step into that. And the visualizations that I get so often from your post, Yvonne, are just so potent, and yet they're so homeopathic at the same time because they just speak to my inner awareness. Like, oh yeah, oh thanks for putting words to that. So
I,
thank you
th-
for
I think
sharing this out.
I think our conversations are exactly that. We are putting voice to what other people are feeling and don't know how to explore, and that is what makes it so wonderful. So you may not be able to share yourself on social media, but you are sharing yourself all over the place, and you are a beautiful soul, and that is what it's our role right now. And so yes, please share and be in love with you.
Yeah. Till next time.
Till next time. Bye bye.
Yeah.